Hello?
Hello?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Paul Rogers?
Yeah, speaking.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good. My name is Steve Harris. I'm calling on behalf of Rocking On Magazine.
Right.
I'm actually an interpreter, and I've been provided with a list of questions by one of the journalists at the magazine. So
Okay, we can work with that.
Okay.
Okay. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Tokyo.
Uh-huh, what time is it there?
It's 9 o'clock in the evening.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got midday here. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's about noon, that's right. This is the interview is mainly about the latest release, plus I guess about half of it is on your, about your career thus far, stuff like that.
Alrighty.
About how much time do we have?
We have about half an hour, 40 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll try to keep it within the bounds of decency.
Okay, great.
So as not to tie you up too long. The first question is, why a tribute album to Muddy Waters in 1993?
It's full circle for me. I started out playing blues, and I got a phone call in about September, I think it was, of last year, from Phil Carson at Victory Music, asking me would I like to sing and do a blues album.
Mm-hmm.
And I said yeah, because I've always loved the blues, and I've actually never really recorded too much of it, although it's influenced a lot of my work, as it were, through the years. And I thought this was a great opportunity to sort of demonstrate my feeling for a great blues artist.
And then I guess there's been a slew of tribute albums in various shapes and forms in the last few years as well. So I guess maybe that's one reason why it occurred to him that it would be a good idea, huh?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think it's quite nice because rock and roll sprang out of the blues. A lot of things did, and it's got to an age now where you can have a tribute because it's got a history, the blues and rock and roll. Prior to this, you couldn't really. Well, maybe you could have done, but it seems a timely thing to do now is to pay homage to the people way back then who went through probably greater difficulties in order to keep to play their music, and I think we owe them something,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense.
Yeah.
At least we owe them respect,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did this fellow figure on doing a Muddy Waters tribute in particular?
Well, we batted various ideas around, and the blues is really, having decided that it was going to be a blues one, it's such a lot. There are so many artists to choose from. If we kind of did one from everybody, it'd be like a multi-CD. So we decided that we would focus on one great artist at this point anyway. And Muddy Waters really does fit the bill for a number of reasons. I mean, to me, his music is still... You could say this about a lot of the blues artists. It's a very difficult question to answer, actually. You could say this about Robert Johnson or Howlin' Wolf, but his music remains very, very vibrant even today, and I can still listen to it and still learn from it, even after 20 years of listening. So, it's just... Yeah.
When did you first encounter Muddy Waters' music?
Well, I've had an album, and I've still got it, and I treasure it. It's an old crackly vinyl album for about 20 years, and it's called The Best of Muddy Waters, and it's got a lot of great songs on it. Actually, they've just released it on CD, so you can actually get it, but it was, at one time, very obscure, I mean, I've treasured that album for a number of years, and I still can get a lot from it.
Was that something you were listening to before you started up with blues rock?
Yeah, well, yes, it was. Free originally was a blues band. We started out, there was a kind of blues boom in the 60s. I don't know if it happened in America or the rest of the world particularly, but in England there was this blues boom going on. And I gravitated towards blues via really the Beatles and the Stones and like that, so that there was a lot of influences in the music that I went on to do, but there was at base a great blues influence.
Mm-hmm. What exactly is Muddy Waters to you? You've touched on that a bit, but maybe you could elaborate a bit more on Muddy Waters' significance to you as an artist or just as an individual.
Yeah, well, he was a very charismatic, great man, really, and it must have been pretty tough in his day. I mean, he can actually remember working in the cotton fields, or actually could, and his music covers quite a large development of blues, because it starts out, a lot of his things were almost country blues, and then he goes to the city and it becomes electrified, and you get this other aspect that the blues developed into, which was the electrified blues, which in a way we've taken even one step further, because their instruments then comparatively were quite primitive. I mean, drums have like really become a technologically an amazing thing right now, compared to at that time, and the bass guitar too, and the lead. Although the lead guitars, the guitarists of their day, I think we're still trying to catch up with in lots of ways, frankly, because they had such a great feel, So what we did was to listen to, we sort of like get the guys in the rehearsal room with the equipment and all these blues records, and just reinterpret it, I guess, today's terms,
Do you see yourself as a blues singer, or is that something you kind of aspire to be, and you sort of...
Yeah, I see myself as a blues soul singer, or a soul blues singer, whichever way around, because I feel that the two are brother and sister. I mean, they're very interrelated, and I think soul sprang out of blues rather than the other way around, frankly, because historically, anyway. So yeah, that's what I am, and I guess I'm also a rock singer too,
Clearly.
Yeah.
The gentleman who made the questions here notes that the blues element was rather conspicuously missing from the latter phase of Bad Company or The Firm, or I believe this last unit you were in is called Raw. Is that it?
The Law. No, not the Raw.
Yeah, okay.
You're thinking of Sushi. Law. LAW.
Okay.
The Law. I mean, it was a shame that didn't actually get off of the ground, because I loved what we did, and laying down the Law was sort of like a #1 AOR record. They tell me. I mean, I wasn't out there at the time, and I think even that it's in a funny sort of, I don't know. Maybe you can't say that's the blues, but the influence is there. For me throughout, and it's possible that towards the end of Bad Company, maybe that's the thing that I was missing and was like looking for, sometimes a thing can be right in front of you and it's so close that you can't see it. In a way, that's possibly true. Yeah. That's why it's so great for me to do the blues right now at this point in time, because it's such a natural thing for me anyway. It feels good.
And getting back to the latest release, how did the idea to feature a different guitarist on each track come about?
Well, Phil Carson called me from Victory and said, Victory Records, and asked me if I'd like to do the blues album. I'm not quite sure how that came about. We had a kind of wish list of all the guitarists that would be great to put on the different tracks, and we started to call. We said, well, it's a great idea if we can pull it off. All we can do is call and see if these guys are interested, and most of them were. I'm very happy to say. I think even now I'm stunned myself when I look at the list of guys on the album. I can't hardly believe it.
Yeah.
And they were all great to work with. I have to say they were really professional, and no egomaniacs. When they get in the studio, they were the business, and it was just great. It was a beautiful thing.
This might be rather difficult, but he wants I have a list of the guitarists here, and he wants a brief rating of each one here, starting with Buddy Guy.
Well, Buddy Guy was as one of my heroes. I mean, it was an absolute thrill, really, to work with him. We contacted his manager, Scott Cameron, who actually was Muddy Waters' manager during his lifetime, and still manages his estate, I believe. You know, all the songs and stuff. And the guy, he said, "Well, look, how about this for a deal? If Paul plays on Buddy's album, Buddy will play on yours." You know, which was sort of like a double whammy for me. And so I went down, and funnily enough, we did a soul song. It's called Some Kind of Wonderful, from way back, pretty obscure track, but we did like a Sam and Dave type of thing. And then he came along, and we did this acoustic version of one of my songs, actually called Muddy Water Blues. And it was, for me, absolutely wonderful, because I'd listened to this guy when I was at school, you know, and to be sitting, playing guitar and singing with him next to me was awesome, to say the least. I was so nervous, but you know, I don't think it shows. You know, I don't think it shows too much. It was just such a great feel.
How about Trevor Rabin?
Trevor, let's see. Yeah, Trevor plays on 2 tracks. The first one, that was pretty much... actually, he was the first guitar player to actually come across and say, "Yep, I'll do it." And we sent him Louisiana Blues, and we did about 50-50 of sending the track to the guy, to the particular guitar player, and then him returning it. And sometimes I could get there and we could do it together, you know. So it's about half and half. And Phil, you know, Phil's obviously got a connection with Trevor, because they work together. Yes is on Victory Music.
Oh, I see.
So that was like, that's the way that was connected there. And he played absolutely stunning guitar. Pino, the bass player, is also, you know, I'm a big fan of. He does these things which I call a sort of like his Zen thing. He plays the music, and then he'll suddenly like unleash the beast and go, and Trevor just nailed those things, and they became another part, which was quite amazing, really. Yep.
So he lent a lot of technical facility to the project.
Yeah, he did, and it surprised me with a lot of these guys. Yeah, probably particularly Trevor, is that, you know, there's a great blues feel there. You know, he was very pleased to. It was refreshing for him, I think, to be able to, you know, I mean, the only instruction if that's the word, we gave to any of the guitar players was feel it. You know, yeah. So what shall I play? Well, you know, feel it, and. He did.
How about Brian Setzer?
Brian Setzer, well, we did Can't Be Satisfied, and the original version of that goes, is very, very country. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, 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 ding. I'm not making a very good job of that, but then we go into like a rock thing of it, you see. So it's kind of, it opens up, we opened it up the way Muddy did, and then we went into a fairly heavy rock thing, and then we came back out into the country thing. And I don't know who suggested, we were sitting around in the studio, and somebody said Brian Setzer would be so perfect for this, because he's he does play a rockabilly style, you know.
Right.
And so we called him, and he said, yeah, he'd love to do it, and he came over to the studio, and he played beautiful on it. You know, there's a kind of sense of humor to the ding, 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 and then it comes in very heavy. I don't know if you've heard the tracks at all.
Yeah, I'm the go-between here, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm rambling and babbling here. Brian said that let's try and keep it concise, shall I? The thing is, though, I mean, I want to try and say more than "oh, he was great," "oh, he was brilliant," you know.
That's good. No, you're doing beautifully. Yeah.
Well, Brian gave the track a lot of color, and he's got this great ability to sort of like emphasize the lyric, you know, which was great.
How about Jeff Beck?
Well, Jeff Beck is, I think he's probably, you can safely say, he's in a league of his own, really. There's Jeff Beck and then there's everybody else in a certain way. He's very accomplished technically, and he's honed his energies so that he can channel the feel technically as well. So he's just a very superb guitar player. He plays 3 tracks, and his roots are very much in the blues. You can definitely hear it, but he's also technically way out there too. So he's a pretty awesome guitar player, really. All in all.
Okay, Richie Sambora.
Yeah, Richie Sambora flew in from doing his video. He was telling us about the mountaintop video. You seen that?
No.
Oh, he's standing on a mountaintop playing his guitar with the camera going around it and stuff, and he was telling us about how they couldn't get him off, you know, and they had to like get the helicopter as close as they could, and he had to fucking jump. He says. He was like, you know, a ball of energy, and he plays on Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, which we have 2 versions. He plays on the sort of fast version, if you like, the up-tempo version, and he added a lot of fire and vitality to the track. He's a great guy.
Steve Miller.
Steve Miller, he's beautiful. He plays on Hoochie Coochie, and although he plays very, very simply, it's amazing how effective he really is, because the track was incomplete without him, and he was like the final piece of the jigsaw that just made everything just lock together, and simple but beautiful.
Dave Gilmour.
Oh yeah, Dave Gilmour. He played something on the Law album, and I was really knocked out with his guitar playing. He's got a great blues feel, very mature, and what can I say? He has a great feel for the blues, and I love his playing, you know.
Slash. Slash.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Actually, Jason Bonham, the drummer on this album, I don't know if you know the lineup or anything, but anyway, Jason's drumming on this. He met Slash in a nightclub and recruited him over a few beers, I do believe. And he plays great on the Hunter, you know. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, very good.
Gary Moore.
Well, Gary Moore's another one. He's really at the forefront of, if there is such a thing as a blues revival going on, I guess Gary would be at the forefront of it, because he's very committed to the blues, and he's been doing it for a lot of years, you know, very purely, you know. And it's great to have him on. He's another one that has a great way of emphasizing the lyric, you know. He goes, I took her to a funeral, the dead jumped up and run, and the guitar goes, you know, it's really cool the way he does that. It's good character, great guitar player.
Brian May.
Brian May, well, I love Brian. He invited me out to play at the Guitar Tribute in Seville. Guitar Legends in Seville.
Right.
And we sort of got to know each other then. And he's very much, he's got very much his own character and his own style of playing, which surprisingly enough does lend itself to the blues. He plays a solo in a complete blues track here. We're talking about 12-bar blues, and his character you know, that Queen thing where he uses the harmonies and stuff like that. He still manages to put his stamp on it and remain within context of the blues. Excellent guy.
And last but not least, Neil Schon.
Neil, you swine. No, Neil's good. Don't print that, please. Neil's great. He's going to actually come out on tour with us when we do a blues, sort of like blues clubs club dates in America in April. We're going to do about a month out there, and he's got a great feel, a very, very good feel. Great guitar player.
And this is a question sort of in regard to all these guitar players. This guy was wondering, is there any one of these guitar players who sort of gels most with your idea of the blues, the Paul Rodgers style of blues? Is there any one guitar player who you seem to be on the nearest wavelength with, with respect to the blues?
Ooh, it's a tough question to answer. I actually feel honored that each and every one of them has played with me on this album, and I really wouldn't like to say which I prefer, because it might be seen as putting the others down in some way, and in fact, it's very hard to choose. I haven't really decided yet. I mean, they all do such a great job. They're all great. Okay.
One last question about this one album here. Some might contend that this sort of a session jam type of album is kind of out of touch with the times. That doesn't bother you?
Well, it would if it were true. I hope that it's not. I like to feel. I mean, for myself anyway. There's a lot of there isn't enough out there of music which is like players sparking off of each other. That's what I want to hear when I turn the radio on. So call me old-fashioned, but that's what I like. And only time will tell, I guess. I think, I do think we've made a great album here that's of enormous interest, and I think, it's something of a milestone, really. But that remains to be seen, I guess.
And the fellow also notes that there was a time when, it's like for a second ago you were saying the rock came from the blues, and certainly there was a time in the history of rock when that was quite apparent, but now, listening to a lot of the stuff these days, it seems kind of divorced from the blues. Do you listen to recent stuff and feel that to be the case?
Yeah, I tend to feel that each generation moves slightly away from the original. That's why it's nice to go back to the original, which is what we did. We didn't do like we didn't listen to Johnny Winter's version of Muddy Waters and then go from there, for instance. And I'm not knocking Johnny Winters, that's what he did and that's fine. But we went back to the original and sprang out from there and developed our version of the blues from there. I think each generation gets slightly away because they're only influenced, perhaps they're not, don't want to sort of like criticize everybody, but what can I say? For instance, I mean, people might listen to sort of like Bad Company, for instance, and be influenced by that, whereas without going back to what we were influenced by, so that they may miss a point, if they were to go back to the original thing. I think there's a lot there. I think that the original blues still has a lot to offer. What was the question again?
Well, the question was about whether or not you listen to recent stuff, and do you notice a lack of the influence from the blues?
Yeah, I think the answer is that I think the original blues still has a lot to offer, and guitarists, singers, everybody would really benefit from from listening to that? Oh God, I sound like I'm preaching now, don't I?
And in this
I don't know.
In this last segment of our interview here, he wants to turn back the clock to the beginning of your career in rock and roll. Was Alexis Korner pivotal in launching your journey through blues rock?
Yeah, he was, very much. He was a great help to. When Free, we were like an age group between 15 and 17, so we were like kids, really. We had no idea that about the business or any of that sort of thing. And he introduced us to a record company, Island Records, and he played his blues records and he listened to our stuff, and he was a great influence, great guy.
And a question about Free here. Why did it disband? It seemed like you were throwing away something very special.
Oh man, it's hard to say now because it's 20 years ago, and the band was together for about 3 years, and it amazes me that the music we made all that time ago has survived. We were young. I guess we didn't know what we had. It's only with hindsight that you can really see. And of course, once Paul Kossoff had died, it made it impossible to even think about reforming. So once that happened, that truly was the end of the band.
Mm-hmm.
Had he lived, it's possible that we would be together now. I actually would love to be able to call him now. It's tough for me as well.
I guess,
but that's life.
I guess I guess all of the material has been re-released on CD. Have you gotten any feedback in regard to that? Either from Japan or back in the UK or from the US or whatever.
Yeah, I get a mixed feedback. I mean, some of the critics here tend to think that the remixes, you shouldn't touch the original, and CDs don't sound as good as vinyl, and all this sort of thing, and blah blah blah. But time moves on, and I think that if you're going to keep the thing alive, which is obviously what the record company want to do anyway, and the fans, I guess, you need to stay with the times, and CDs are where it's at, and I'm quite happy with the mixes that they've done.
How about Bad Company? It's a rather odd question about it, but this fellow here notes that the Americanization of Bad Company during its middle stage was kind of a failure. Do you look back and do you agree with that assessment?
Wow, that's a very good question. The Americanization. Well, man, I mean, that would take me I could write a book about that, because I'm not quite, you'd have to tell me what the Americanization means, because I'm not quite sure that I know. I tend to think of rock music as a global thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not American, it's not Japanese, it's not particularly English, although there are characters from each, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there is an English character and there is an American character, but music itself is a global thing. And it's hard for me to say, because the song itself, Bad Company, which was there at the launching of the band, which I wrote, is really about the very Wild West, the sense of like the lonesome horizon and being far from civilization in a distant land, all that stuff. What more American can you get than that, really? So it's hard to know what exactly the guy means. But it may mean the commerciality. If he means that, then possibly he's true. He's right.
Uh-huh.
Well,
it was always a fairly commercial band, meaning it was successful, meaning you sold quite a few albums. Why would it be more commercial in the middle phase than, say, in the initial phase?
I don't know. You got me.
Was there a conscious attempt to pander at all to popular taste, or?
Oh, I see. I don't really think so. No, I think we pretty much went our own way, and you do have to you do write towards a song or an album being successful, and you do tend to try and do things that you know will work or that you hope will work. That's just the natural development of the band. I think for me, I enjoyed the time in Bad Company. Now looking back, and I think we influenced a lot of people, and I think we did okay. It's possible that for me, what happened was that I tended to just there was something missing, and that's why I left the band. There was something missing that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and it may be that it's a blues sort of thing that I was missing, you know. Yeah, that's why doing this is very satisfying for me.
Yeah. The last question about Bad Company here is, how do you feel about Bad Company without you? And I would have to add a personal note here. It seems like every 2 or 3 years you turn on the radio and you hear a very generic sounding hard rock song. They say that's by Bad Company. You think, my God, the band is still around, but doesn't sound anything like it used to.
Well, to be honest, I haven't really. I mean, I speak to the guys occasionally. Well, Simon anyway. But I haven't really followed the band's career since I left. To be honest, so I couldn't really comment on what they're doing right now. You know, I know it's a tough business. And
you aren't sent promos or informed of their latest direction or whatever.
Not really. No, I don't see why I would be really. No.
That's interesting. I mean, you started up Bad Company. I mean, certainly people associate the name with you, so I would think you'd be interested in at least the band's reputation.
Well, as it's out of my hands, I find that it's better for me to not get involved. You know, I mean, it's there's the whole sort of like record company thing there that, like, you know, they have the name now and they're off and running with it, and really it's no longer appropriate for me to comment. I guess, you know, is the thing to say here.
Professional courtesy.
Something like that.
How about the firm, your relationship with Jimmy Page? I suppose that you knew each other for years. How has it sort of evolved into a band?
The firm. Well, it's I don't know. How do these things happen? He came round, and I've got a studio here at my house, and we started doing things, you know. And it seemed like the thing to do is to get a band and take it out on the road. He was very keen at that time to get out on the road. I was less keen, but it developed. It's one of those things that had its own momentum. The interesting thing with Jimmy and I is that we didn't have a contract between us at all. It was just purely a handshake, and we said, okay, we'll do 2 albums and we'll do 2 tours, and then we'll see how we feel at the end of that time. And at the end of that time, we both felt that, you know, it was fine, but we would leave it right there, you know. There's no acrimony. We were still good friends. But I don't think that we are quite as musically compatible as it would appear on paper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing to analyze whether that's going to work. But I think what we did, I'm very proud of what we did, particularly Midnight Moonlight Lady, and quite a few other things, you know. Yeah.
The initial agreement was for it to only last 2 records, though.
Yeah.
Just give it a go and put out 2 records, and that would be the end of it.
Well, and then take stock and see whether or not we would continue after that.
Yeah.
It's kind of unique, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And you touched on the law a second ago, and I can't remember how far we got into that, because that question was scheduled for the end of the interview. Maybe you could once again.
I've messed up your schedule, huh?
Right. We have to cover these things in the planned stages.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
how about law then?
How about, what was the question about it?
What's transpired since the first album was released?
Oh yeah. Well, I thought that the law was a very beautiful thing in concept. The idea was that Kenny and I would be we would be like the law, and then we would add different musicians depending on which direction we wanted to take the thing. I mean, I had in mind doing all kinds of different things. Possibly even a blues album, possibly a soul album, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then possibly a original album. And the idea initially was just to kind of get it off the ground, and laying down the law of the track did reasonably well, I think. It was #1 AOR record in America.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? We're still good friends, Kenny and I think we may work together in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. To be honest, I think we had a fairly cool response from the record company with that. Although I don't want to sort of get into that because they'll, it's like political. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was a definite lack of understanding, shall we say, from the record company, and it kind of didn't quite get off the ground.
Well, and
so I decided that.
No, please continue.
So I decided that I think the best thing for me to do would be to be a solo artist and work with different people, with a different record company.
But there was never any time when you and Kenny were sort of gung ho to get out on the road, though.
Yeah, it's funny. We tried very hard to get out on the road. In fact, in all its life, the law only did one date, and that was at Milton Keynes with ZZ Top. And I think there's about like 80-odd thousand people there, and it was a brilliant gig, outdoor gig, And we were hoping that would break the ice and get some things moving, but somehow it just didn't. We just couldn't get the thing going,
Strange. These things just sort of dry up and blow away, I suppose. But
yeah, it's either a thing gains momentum or it doesn't. It's hard to say what will make it.
Mm-hmm.
I think now though I'm very happy working with Victory because Phil Carson and I are on the same wavelength with where to go with this thing, and really I'm looking forward to getting out and touring, and we're going to be doing some club dates in America. Did I mention that?
No.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some club dates in America and hopefully generate some heat,
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to that.
You mentioned
that's another Roots thing.
You mentioned the involvement of Neil Schon in that. Who else would be involved in the live show?
Jason on the drums, Jason Bonham,
mm-hmm.
and Pino on bass.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be a pretty hot band.
Who is this Pino fellow?
Pino Palladino. He is a session bass player.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a lot with Paul Young. He was on Wherever I Lay My Hat. He's done a lot of things.
Oh, he plays
and
the
to me, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me he's a brilliant bass player.
I see. Okay. There was actually one question I missed here. Were there any other guitarists considered for the Muddy Waters tribute?
Yeah, there was I think about 3 that didn't come across, but I think that's not too bad when you consider it's like it's a pretty high percentage
mm-hmm.
of the guitarists that did make it.
And who are the 3 that didn't make it?
I would have liked Jimmy to play on one of the tracks, but he was involved with his new project and couldn't make it, which was a shame really. But then Jeff played very well
mm-hmm.
on that track, so that was cool. Who else was there? I would have liked Santana would have been nice to play on one of the tracks, but again, his schedule wouldn't permit. And also I would have liked Billy Gibbons to play on one of the tracks, but that didn't come together.
Mm-hmm.
But, I wouldn't really want to dwell on the fact of any guitarists that didn't make it on the album, because so many great ones did, you know.
Mm-hmm. Were there any songs considered that didn't make the final cut?
No, I think pretty much went according to plan.
Okay. Good. I just missed that question in the last segment there. All right. Well, I see that the clock now says 40 minutes, so I guess our time is up. Thanks a lot for all your help. You've been
okay.
You've been
Thanks.
You've been very thorough.
Oh, good. I hope you can put something together with that, Steve.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So
great. Well, good luck.
Yeah. And again, this was for Rocking On magazine. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Okay then.
Okay. Take care now.
You too.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Still can get a lot from it.
Was that something you were listening to before you started up with blues rock?
Yeah, well, yes, it was. Free originally was a blues band. We started out, there was a kind of blues boom in the 60s. I don't know if it happened in America or the rest of the world particularly, but in England there was this blues boom going on. And I gravitated towards blues via really the Beatles and the Stones and like that, you know, so that there was a lot of influences in the music that I went on to do, but there was at base a great blues influence.
Mm-hmm. What exactly is Muddy Waters to you? You touched on that a bit, but maybe you could elaborate a bit more on Muddy Waters' significance to you as an artist or just as an individual.
Yeah, well, he was a very charismatic, great man, really. And it must have been pretty tough in his day. I mean, he can actually remember working in the cotton fields, or actually could, you know. And his music covers quite a large development of blues, because it starts out, a lot of his things were almost country blues, and then he goes to the city and it becomes electrified, and you get this victory music, asking me would I like to sing and do a blues album.
Mm-hmm.
And I said yeah, because I've always loved the blues, and I've actually never really recorded too much of it, although it's influenced a lot of my work, as it were, you know, through the years. And I thought this was a great opportunity to sort of demonstrate my feeling for a great blues artist.
And then I guess there's been a slew of tribute albums in various shapes and forms in the last few years as well. So I guess maybe that's one reason why it occurred to him that it would be a good idea, huh?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think it's quite nice because, you know, rock and roll sprang out of the blues. A lot of things did, and it's got to an age now where you can have a tribute because you know it's got a history, the blues and rock and roll. Prior to this, you couldn't really. Well, maybe you could have done, but it seems a timely thing to do now is to pay homage to the people way back then who went through probably greater difficulties in order to keep, you know, to play their music, and I think we owe them something, you know,
mm-hmm.
in a sense.
Yeah.
At least we owe them respect, you know.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Paul Rogers?
Yeah, speaking.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good. My name is Steve Harris. I'm calling on behalf of Rocking On magazine.
Right.
I'm actually an interpreter, and I've been provided with a list of questions by one of the journalists at the magazine. So
Okay, we can work with that.
Okay.
Okay. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Tokyo.
What time is it there?
It's 9 o'clock in the evening.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got midday here. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's about noon. That's right. This is the interview is mainly about the latest release. Plus, I guess about half of it is on your about your career thus far, stuff like that.
Alrighty.
About how much time do we have?
We have about half an hour, 40 minutes.
Okay. Well, we'll try to keep it within the bounds of decency.
Okay, great.
So as not to tie you up too long. The first question is, why a tribute album to Muddy Waters in 1993?
It's full circle for me. I started out playing blues, and I got a phone call in about September, I think it was, of last year, from Phil Carson at
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did this fellow figure on doing a Muddy Waters tribute in particular?
Well, we batted various ideas around, and the blues is really, having decided that it was going to be a blues one, it's such a lot. There are so many artists to choose from. If we kind of did one from everybody, it would be like a multi-CD. So we decided that we would focus on one great artist at this point anyway, and Muddy Waters really does fit the bill for a number of reasons. I mean, to me, his music is still... You could say this about a lot of the blues artists. It's a very difficult question to answer, actually. You could say this about Robert Johnson or Howlin' Wolf, but his music remains very, very vibrant even today, and I can still listen to it and still learn from it, even after 20 years of listening. So, it's just... Yeah.
When did you first encounter Muddy Waters' music?
Well, I've had an album, and I've still got it, and I treasure it. It's an old crackly vinyl album for about 20 years, and it's called The Best of Muddy Waters, and it's got a lot of great songs on it. Actually, they've just released it on CD, so you can actually get it, but it was, at one time, very obscure, I mean, I've treasured that album for a number of years, and you get this other aspect that the blues developed into, which was the electrified blues, which in a way we've taken even one step further, because their instruments then, comparatively, were quite primitive. I mean, drums have like really become a technologically an amazing thing right now, compared to at that time, and the bass guitar too, and the lead. Although the lead guitars, the guitarists of their day, I think we're still trying to catch up with in lots of ways, frankly, because they had such a great feel, So what we did was to listen to, we sort of like get the guys in the rehearsal room with the equipment, and all of this, like all these blues records, and just reinterpret it, I guess, today's terms,
Do you see yourself as a blues singer, or is that something you kind of aspire to be, and you sort of...
Yeah, I see myself as a blues soul singer, or a soul blues singer, whichever way around, because I feel that the two are brother and sister. I mean, they're very interrelated, and I think soul sprang out of blues rather than the other way around, frankly, because historically, anyway.